In this lesson, we'll get into a very important aspect of building single-page apps, handling events. First, we're going to need some new elements to interact with. Let's add a new ref state called cart. And in the template, we need to show this cart state. We also want a button so that we can add new items to the cart. These are the new elements that we just added. When the button gets clicked, we want a number of items in the cart to go up. To attach a click event to a button, we'll use vOn, followed by the name of the event. Just like vBind, the content inside the attribute will be treated as JavaScript code. Now when you click the button, the cart's number will get updated. Optionally, you can wrap this in a function. This is similar to how event handlers look like in React, but this function wrapper is optional in Vue.js. So if you omit the function wrapper, it will get added for you automatically by the compiler. If you don't want too much JavaScript code in the template, you can also extract this to a function. And now we can create the add to cart function up here. Next, we want to add a mouse over event to the color names so that the user can choose the color they want by hovering one of these colors. And the picture will be changed. We have to add an image property to each variant. Notice that we're using Sox Blue image here, so we have to import it up here. I'm going to copy this, change the file path, and the name. Now we're going to add a mouse over event in here. We're using the shorthand syntax for vOn. It will trigger a function called updateImage and pass variant image into this function. We're going to create the updateImage function up here. It will receive the variant image as a parameter, which is coming from here. Finally, we're going to set the image ref with this parameter. The image ref is the one that we created up here. Now we can choose between the two colors and the image will get updated. Vue.js allows you to use modifiers on the event attribute. Here are some of them. The once modifier will make sure that the event can be triggered only once on the same element. The prevent modifier is like prevent default in React. The stop modifier will stop the event from propagating further up. Modifiers are very useful when it comes to key events. For instance, key down with the enter modifier will target the enter key. You can check out the Vue.js documentation to see the full list of modifiers you can use. We have completed the cycle of creating state, using the state on the template, and setting up events on the template to change the state. In the next and final lesson of this course, we'll talk about the CSS related features that you will need in a single page app project. In this lesson, we're going to polish the design of the app using class binding and style binding. We want some actual colors to replace these names. We have to first make them look like circles by using the class color circle from main.css. Now they look like this. They look like circles, but they don't have colors. Next, we want to use the names of the colors green and blue to dynamically set the background colors of the circles. To set the background color dynamically, we're going to create a binding with the style attribute. And then we're going to put the style here as an object literal. Set background color to variant color. And now we can remove the text binding. The way we put the CSS in the style binding is very similar to how you would do it in React, except that in Vue.js, we're using quotes to surround the JavaScript expression. Variant color will be rendered as one of the color names. The final rendering will be this. Notice that the style binding became the normal style attribute. In the browser, you should see two new color circles. Now let's move on to the button. Currently, the in-stock ref is set to true, but if we change it to false, we will want the button to be disabled because the product is out of stock. We can create another binding with the disabled attribute and bind this to not in stock. Now in the browser, we won't be able to click on a button when in stock is false. But to make the button look unclickable, we have to use CSS. We already have a disabled button class in main.css. Now we just need to create a class binding with the disabled button class. We're using an object for the class binding. The property key is the class name, and the property value should be a Boolean value. So if this expression is true, the class will be rendered. Whenever a class binding is used on the same element with the normal class attribute, they will be merged in the final HTML rendering. Now when you go to a browser, the button will be disabled and also look disabled. The class binding can also be used with an array instead of an object. This can make it easier to use a bunch of string variables as class names. Finally, I want to wrap up this course with a mention of the optional style tag. Technically, script is also optional. So technically, you can have just the template if that's all you need. The style tag is simple. You just put CSS in it and it works. To make it even more useful, you can use the scoped attribute. Now the CSS will be scoped to only the current component and not affect its child component except the root element of that component. For example, if we have a child component with one root element containing two other elements, import and use it in the parent component. Now, the CSS will only affect the topmost element of the child component. Now that you have some basics of Vue.js, you're ready to move on to the next course of Vue for React Devs, where we'll discuss more advanced concepts that are done differently in Vue.js compared to React.js. I will see you there.